Julia was at home on a quiet Sunday afternoon when her life took an unexpected turn. The sun streamed through the living room windows, casting a golden light on the furniture. She was organizing some old photos when Miguel's phone vibrated on the table beside her. Without thinking much, Julia picked up the device to hand it to him, who was in the bedroom. However, before she could call out to Miguel, something caught her attention. The phone's screen displayed a message from Beatrice, her sister. Julia hesitated for a moment, curiosity winning over her conscience. She knew she shouldn't, but she opened the message. What she read left her paralyzed. The words on the screen spoke of secret meetings and feelings that should never have existed. It was an intimate dialogue, laden with a betrayal that Julia could never have imagined. Her heart raced, and the room seemed to spin around her. Trying to hold back tears, Julia walked to the bedroom, where she found Miguel sitting on the bed, distracted by a book. He looked up and smiled at her, but the smile quickly disappeared when he noticed her expression. "What's wrong, love?" he asked, concerned. Julia tossed the phone onto the bed, the messages still open. "Can you explain this to me?" Her voice was firm, but she felt the ground opening beneath her feet. Miguel looked at the phone, his face turning pale. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. Finally, he sighed, defeated. "Julia, I don't know what to say. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" Julia repeated, incredulous. "With my sister? How could you do this to me?" Miguel tried to approach, but Julia stepped back. "I never meant to hurt you," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Things between me and Beatrice just happened. I was feeling lonely, and she was there." "That doesn't justify anything," Julia replied, her pain turning into anger. "You've destroyed everything." Not knowing what else to say, Julia left the room, feeling suffocated. She needed air. She needed to think. She grabbed her purse and left the house, tears finally falling as she walked through the city streets. The memories of happy moments with Miguel mingled with the pain of betrayal, creating a whirlwind of emotions that left her ungrounded. As she walked, Julia realized she needed time away from it all. She remembered the coastal village where her grandmother lived, a place that had always brought her peace. Determined to escape the pain, she began planning her departure, knowing she needed to find herself again before deciding what to do with her life and the people who had betrayed her. Thus, with a heavy heart but determined to find a new direction, Julia returned home to start packing. She knew the journey would be difficult, but she also knew she needed to face this storm to finally find calm. Julia left the next morning before the sun fully rose. The city was still asleep, wrapped in a soft mist that seemed to reflect her state of mind. She drove in silence, her hands firm on the wheel, as urban landscapes gradually gave way to green fields and winding roads leading to the coastal village. The village was a place Julia always associated with happy childhood memories. Visits to her grandmother's house were filled with adventures and stories told by the fireplace. Now she hoped that place could offer the solace and tranquility she so desperately needed. Upon arrival, she was greeted by a salty breeze and the distant sound of waves crashing on the beach. Her grandmother's house was exactly as she remembered, cozy and full of memories. Julia took a deep breath, feeling the tension in her shoulders begin to dissipate. Determined to keep busy, Julia walked to the village square, where she found Dona Amelia's bookstore. The shop was a refuge of old and new books, with the smell of paper and coffee filling the air. Dona Amelia, a lady with gray hair and kind eyes, recognized her immediately. "Julia, my dear, it's been so long." Dona Amelia hugged her warmly, as if she had known her forever. "What brings you back to the village?" Julia hesitated but soon realized she didn't need to hide the truth. "I needed some time for myself. Things got complicated in the city." Dona Amelia nodded, understanding without needing more explanations. "Well, you're in the right place. And if you need anything or a distraction, the bookstore is always open for you. In fact, I could use an assistant if you're interested." The offer caught Julia by surprise, but she accepted with gratitude. Working at the bookstore would be a way to stay occupied and perhaps find some meaning amidst the chaos her life had become. In the days that followed, Julia immersed herself in work. Organizing the shelves and helping customers find books was a simple task, but it brought her a sense of normalcy. Gradually, she began to feel part of the village community, getting to know the residents and their stories. The nights, however, were still difficult. Alone in her grandmother's house, Julia found herself lost in thoughts about Miguel and Beatrice. The pain of betrayal was still sharp, but the distance gave her a new perspective. Maybe, far from it all, she could find a way to forgive, or at least accept what had happened. A month passed, and Julia began to realize that the village was becoming more than just a refuge. It was a place where she could start over if she wished. And as she walked along the beach at sunset, she felt for the first time in a long time a spark of hope. As the weeks passed, Julia began to feel more at ease in the village. The peaceful routine and welcoming environment were slowly healing her emotional wounds. She woke up early every morning, enjoying the fresh sea breeze as she walked along the deserted beach. These solitary moments were precious, offering her time to reflect and reorganize her thoughts. In the bookstore, Julia had become a constant and beloved presence. The villagers quickly grew accustomed to Dona Amelia's new assistant, and many came just to chat or ask for reading recommendations. Julia was surprised to find how these small daily encounters helped restore her faith in people. One morning, while organizing a stack of newly arrived books, Julia noticed an especially old and worn volume. It was a diary, with a cracked leather cover and yellowed pages. Curious, she opened it and discovered it belonged to a young woman who had lived in the village decades ago. Fascinated by the stories of the past, Julia began reading the diary whenever she had free time. The young woman's stories, her hopes and challenges, resonated deeply with Julia. She felt as if she were getting to know a longtime friend, someone who understood her own struggles and uncertainties. The diary became a source of comfort, helping her see that even in difficult times, there was always the possibility of a fresh start. On a sunny afternoon, while walking through the square, Julia came across a small street market. The stalls were full of local produce, from fresh fruits to colorful crafts. As she explored the market, she felt someone gently tap her shoulder. Turning around, she found herself face to face with a man with a friendly gaze and a warm smile. "Hi, you must be the new assistant at the bookstore," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Lucas, the local artist." Julia shook his hand, feeling immediately at ease. "Yes, I'm Julia. Nice to meet you, Lucas." They talked for a few minutes, discovering common interests and sharing stories about the village. Lucas was a talented artist, known for his paintings that captured the essence of the coastline. He invited Julia to visit his studio, an old cabin near the beach, and she accepted with enthusiasm. In the following days, Julia and Lucas spent more time together. He showed her his creative process, and she was enchanted by the way he transformed familiar landscapes into vibrant works of art. Lucas, in turn, was intrigued by Julia's passion for literature and the village's history. Their friendship quickly blossomed. Lucas was a constant and comforting presence, someone with whom Julia could be herself without fear of judgment. He encouraged her to explore her own creativity, suggesting she write her own stories or capture her experiences through photography. As the summer progressed, Julia realized her life was changing in ways she never expected. The days in the village were helping her heal her broken heart, and her friendship with Lucas was becoming an important part of that journey. For the first time in a long time, Julia began to imagine a future full of possibilities. The sun was already high when Julia arrived at Lucas's cabin, situated on a small hill overlooking the sea. The wooden structure, covered with flowering vines, exuded a rustic and welcoming charm. Julia felt immediately drawn to the place, as if it held secrets waiting to be discovered. Lucas greeted her with a warm smile and fresh coffee. "Welcome to my sanctuary," he joked, gesturing for her to enter. The interior of the cabin was a mix of art studio and cozy home, with canvases leaning against the walls and brushes scattered across a work table. "It's beautiful here," Julia commented, admiring an unfinished painting that captured the dawn light over the ocean. "You really managed to capture the essence of the place." "Thank you," Lucas replied, a touch of pride in his voice. "I think the village has its own magic. And you? How are you adapting to life here?" Julia hesitated for a moment, pondering the question. "It's been refreshing," she admitted. I'm still dealing with some things, but I feel like I'm on the right path. Lucas nodded, understanding without needing more details. Sometimes, a new environment is all we need to see things from a different perspective. They spent the morning together, Lucas painting while Julia read the old diary she had found in the bookstore. The atmosphere was calm and collaborative, each immersed in their own world, but sharing each other's company. Have you ever thought about writing your own stories? Lucas asked suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Julia laughed, surprised by the suggestion. I don't know. I've never considered myself a writer. Well, you have the eye of someone who sees beyond the surface, Lucas said, looking at her seriously. I think you could create something really special. Lucas's words planted a seed of an idea in Julia's mind. Perhaps writing could be a way to process her experiences, to transform pain into something beautiful. She promised herself she would give this new form of expression a try. As the days passed, Julia and Lucas continued to meet regularly. They explored the village together, discovering hidden trails and secret beaches. The friendship between them grew with each day, and Julia felt grateful to have found someone so genuine and inspiring. One afternoon, while walking along a trail leading to a lookout, Lucas stopped suddenly and turned to Julia. You know, I've never met anyone like you, he said, his voice soft. You have a strength that's truly admirable. Julia was speechless, surprised by Lucas's sincerity. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of connection that went beyond friendship. Thank you, Lucas. You've been an important part of this journey for me. They stood in silence for a moment, looking at the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Julia realized that although there was still much to resolve in her life, she was no longer alone. Lucas was a constant and reassuring presence, someone who made her believe that true love and friendship were possible. As the summer progressed, Julia and Lucas continued to explore the village and its surroundings, strengthening the bond that united them. The friendship between them was becoming deeper, and Julia found herself looking forward to each meeting, each conversation they had. Lucas was a good listener, always ready to offer a new perspective or simply a friendly shoulder. On a particularly hot afternoon, they decided to visit a small hidden waterfall that Lucas had discovered on one of his hikes. The path there was surrounded by tall trees and dense vegetation, creating a green and cool tunnel that protected them from the sun's heat. This place is amazing, Julia exclaimed, marveling as they reached the clearing where the waterfall gently cascaded into a small pond. How did you find it? I was exploring one day and heard the sound of water, Lucas replied, smiling. I thought it would be a good place to paint, but I ended up coming here more to relax. They spent the afternoon there, swimming in the refreshing waters and talking about everything and nothing. Julia felt lighter than she had in months, as if the water was washing away not only the heat, but also the worries and hurts she still carried. Have you thought about going back to the city? Lucas asked as they rested on the shore, the sound of the water in the background creating a soft melody. Julia pondered the question. I don't think I'm ready yet, she admitted. The village has been a refuge, a place where I can rediscover myself without external pressures. Lucas nodded, understanding. Sometimes we need space to find ourselves again, and I'm glad you found that here. The day turned into night, and they lit a small fire to warm and illuminate the clearing. As the flames danced, Julia felt grateful for Lucas's friendship. He was an anchor amidst the storm her life had become, someone she could trust completely. Lucas, I don't know what I would have done without you, Julia said, her voice soft but full of emotion. You've been an incredible friend. Lucas smiled, a genuine glow in his eyes. And you've been an inspiration to me, Julia. Your courage and resilience are admirable. They sat in silence, allowing the words to linger between them. Julia realized that, for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. Her friendship with Lucas was a beacon in her life, guiding her out of the shadows of the past and toward a future that, though uncertain, seemed promising. As the night wore on, they extinguished the fire and began to walk back to the village. The full moon illuminated the path, and Julia felt comforted by Lucas's presence beside her. She knew that, regardless of what the future held, she was no longer alone. Summer was in full swing when Julia received an unexpected visit that threatened to shake the peace she had found in the village. It was a sunny, quiet morning, and Julia was in the bookstore, helping Donna Amelia organize a new shipment of books, when the door opened with a gentle chime of the bell. Raising her eyes, Julia froze. Beatrice, her sister, was standing at the entrance, visibly nervous, but determined. Julia's world seemed to stop for a moment as she absorbed Beatrice's presence, someone she hadn't seen since the painful discovery of the betrayal. "Julia," Beatrice began, her voice hesitant but firm. "We need to talk." Donna Amelia, sensing the tension in the air, gave a knowing smile and discreetly retreated to the back of the shop, leaving the sisters alone. Julia took a deep breath, trying to control the wave of emotions threatening to overflow. "I didn't expect to see you here," Julia finally said, her voice colder than she intended. "What do you want, Beatrice?" Beatrice stepped forward, her hands trembling as she clutched the strap of her bag. "I know you probably hate me now, and I don't blame you, but I needed to see you. I needed to try to explain." Julia crossed her arms, maintaining a defensive posture. "Explain what? That you betrayed my trust in the worst possible way?" "Yes, I know," Beatrice replied, the pain evident in her expression. "I made a terrible mistake, and I'm sorry for it. But please, let me explain." There was a long silence as Julia considered her options. Part of her wanted to scream and throw Beatrice out of the bookstore, but another part, more curious, wanted to understand how everything had come to this point. Finally she nodded, gesturing to a nearby table. "Okay, talk," Julia said, sitting down and looking directly into her sister's eyes. Beatrice took a deep breath before beginning to speak. She recounted how she had always felt in Julia's shadow, struggling with feelings of jealousy and inadequacy. When Miguel began to approach her, Beatrice saw it as validation, a way to finally be noticed. But she soon realized the mistake she was making and how much she was hurting Julia. "I never wanted to hurt you, Julia," Beatrice said, tears streaming down her face. "I know I ruined everything, but I hope that one day you can forgive me." Julia listened in silence, her heart a mix of anger, sadness, and compassion. The betrayal still hurt, but she also saw the genuine pain in Beatrice. It was a complicated situation, and Julia knew she couldn't resolve everything in a single meeting. "I need time to think," Julia finally said, her voice softer. "I don't know if I can forgive now, but I appreciate you coming here." Beatrice nodded, understanding. "I get it. And I'll be here if you want to talk more." With that, Beatrice stood up and left the bookstore, leaving Julia alone with her thoughts. The encounter had reopened wounds Julia thought were healing, but it also gave her a new perspective on the complexity of human relationships. As the day turned into night, Julia reflected on what had happened. She knew the path to forgiveness would be long and difficult, but perhaps, with time, she could find a way. After Beatrice's unexpected visit, Julia spent the following days in a state of introspection. Her sister's presence had reopened wounds she was trying to heal, but it also forced her to confront feelings she had buried. She found herself reflecting on the complexity of love, forgiveness, and what it truly means to move on. On a cloudy morning, while walking along the deserted beach, Julia felt an urgent need to clarify her thoughts. The sound of the waves crashing against the rocks provided a soothing backdrop for her tumultuous mind. She knew she needed to talk to someone, and Lucas seemed the natural choice. Meeting Lucas at his studio, Julia was greeted with a warm smile and a cup of hot tea. He seemed to sense her unease and invited her to sit in a comfortable chair near the window. "You seem thoughtful today," Lucas commented, observing her with understanding eyes. Julia sighed, taking a sip of tea before speaking. "Beatrice came to see me." Lucas raised his eyebrows, surprised. "And how was that?" "Complicated," Julia replied, a touch of sadness in her voice. "She wants me to forgive her, but I don't know if I'm ready for that. Part of me understands what she said, but another part is still hurt." Lucas nodded, understanding Julia's internal struggle. Forgiveness is a process, not an instant decision. You need to give yourself time to feel what you need to feel. Lucas's words resonated deeply with Julia. She knew he was right, but the idea of forgiving Beatrice seemed like an insurmountable mountain. "And what about Miguel?" she asked, the question she had been avoiding finally coming to the surface. "Should I try to forgive him too?" Lucas pondered for a moment before responding. "Maybe forgiveness isn't for them, but for you. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or accepting what happened, but releasing the weight you carry." Julia was silent, absorbing Lucas's advice. She knew forgiveness wouldn't come easily, but she also realized that continuing to carry the pain and anger would only prevent her from moving forward. In the days that followed, Julia began to explore the concept of forgiveness in her journal, writing about her emotions and experiences. The words flowed freely, and she felt a small but noticeable release in her heart. One afternoon, while walking through the village, Julia found Beatrice sitting on a bench in the park. There was a palpable nervousness in the air, but also a sense that this moment was necessary. "Can I sit?" Julia asked, hesitant. Beatrice nodded, making room for Julia. They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of children playing in the background creating an atmosphere of normalcy. "I've been thinking about what you said," Julia began, her voice firm. "And I want to try to understand. I'm not promising anything, but I'm willing to try." Beatrice looked at her, hope mixed with caution in her eyes. "I appreciate that, Julia. I know it won't be easy, but I'm here for whatever you need." The sisters continued to talk, this time with less tension and more understanding. They didn't resolve everything that day, but they took the first step toward a possible reconciliation. With the first step toward forgiveness taken, Julia felt more prepared to face the complexities of her personal relationships. However, the journey was far from over, and she knew she would need support to keep moving forward. It was with this in mind that, on a quiet morning, she decided to visit Dona Emilia at the bookstore, seeking the wisdom that only an older friend could offer. The bookstore was calm, with sunlight filtering through the windows and illuminating the shelves filled with books. Dona Emilia, always attentive, immediately noticed that Julia had something on her mind. With a welcoming gesture, she invited Julia to sit in one of the comfortable armchairs in the corner of the shop. "So, my dear, what's bothering you today?" Dona Emilia asked, her voice soft and full of understanding. Julia took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts before responding. "I spoke with Beatrice, and somehow, I feel like I'm on the right path to forgiving her. But there's still so much to process. And Miguel, I don't know if I can deal with him." Dona Emilia nodded, listening attentively. "Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, Julia. It's not something you do for them, but for you. To free your heart from the weight of pain." Julia pondered Dona Emilia's words, feeling grateful for her wisdom. "But how do I know I'm ready to forgive? What if I'm never ready?" "Forgiveness is not a destination. It's a journey," Dona Emilia replied with a gentle smile. "You can take small steps, and each one is a victory. Don't rush. Give time to time." The conversation brought new encouragement to Julia, who began to realize that the healing process didn't need to be rushed. She decided that, for now, she would focus on herself, on her passions, and on what truly mattered for her well-being. With this in mind, Julia immersed herself in her hobbies, dedicating herself to writing and photography. She found inspiration in the village's landscapes, capturing moments of beauty and simplicity that surrounded her. This practice became a form of meditation, helping her find inner peace. Lucas, always present, encouraged Julia to share her stories and photos with a larger audience. "You have incredible talent, Julia. Your words and images can touch others, just as they touched me." Julia hesitated, but the idea of sharing her experiences began to seem less daunting and more like an opportunity for connection. With Lucas's support, she began working on a small project, a collection of stories and photographs that represented her healing journey. As she worked on this project, Julia realized she was, slowly but surely, freeing herself from the past. The act of creating something new from her painful experiences was, in itself, an act of forgiveness and renewal. One night, while reviewing her notes on her porch, Julia received a message from Miguel. He wanted to talk, to apologize in person, and perhaps seek his own path to forgiveness. Julia read the message several times, pondering what she should do. After much reflection, she decided she wasn't ready to face Miguel yet, but that didn't mean she wasn't making progress. With the project of stories and photographs underway, Julia found herself increasingly immersed in her new life in the village. Creating something tangible from her experiences brought a sense of purpose and accomplishment that she hadn't felt in a long time. Each day, she felt more connected to the place and the people who were now part of her journey. Lucas remained a constant and encouraging presence. He not only helped Julia refine her ideas, but also encouraged her to explore new forms of expression. On a sunny afternoon, while walking along a trail leading to a lookout, Lucas suggested she organize a small exhibition in the village. "It would be an incredible opportunity to share your work and your story," he said, looking at the horizon. "The village would love to see what you've created." The idea was intimidating, but also exciting. Julia had never considered showing her work so publicly, but the prospect of sharing her journey with the community that had welcomed her was tempting. She decided it was time to take that step and began planning the exhibition with the help of Lucas and Dona Emilia. As the preparations progressed, Julia also continued to rebuild her relationship with Beatrice. The two sisters were slowly rebuilding their trust, and Beatrice frequently visited the village to spend time with Julia. They rediscovered the joy of sharing stories and laughter, something they thought they had lost forever. During one of these visits, Beatrice shared a letter she had written to Julia, expressing her feelings and regrets sincerely and vulnerably. "I know words can't erase what I did," Beatrice said, handing over the letter. "But I hope this shows how committed I am to making things right." Julia read the letter in silence, feeling the emotion in her sister's words. Although the path to full forgiveness was still long, she realized she was willing to try. "Thank you for this, Beatrice. It means a lot to me," Julia replied with a soft smile. At the same time, Julia also began to realize that her feelings for Lucas were evolving. What had begun as a genuine friendship was turning into something deeper and more meaningful. Lucas had always been by her side, offering unconditional support and understanding, and Julia began to imagine a future where he could be more than just a friend. During a walk at sunset, as the sky was tinged with shades of orange and pink, Julia decided it was time to talk to Lucas about what she felt. "Lucas," she began, hesitant but determined. "I've been thinking a lot about us and how much you mean to me." Lucas stopped, looking at her with an expression of surprise and expectation. "Julia, you mean a lot to me too. Your presence in my life has been a blessing." With her heart racing, Julia continued, "I feel there's something more between us, something worth exploring. And I'd like to know if you feel the same." Lucas smiled, a warm glow in his eyes. "Julia, I've felt that since the moment we met, and I'm more than willing to see where this takes us." They continued to walk, hands intertwined, feeling that a new chapter was beginning. For Julia, it was the start of a new phase of her life. With the exhibition set for the following month, Julia was immersed in preparations. Dona Amelia's bookstore would become the perfect space to display her photographs and stories, and the community was excited to see the work she had created. Julia felt nervous and excited, eager to share her journey with those who had supported her. As she organized the final photos and texts, Julia realized how much she had changed since arriving in the village. The project was not just a collection of images and words, it was a reflection of her personal transformation, of her struggles and achievements. Each photograph captured a moment of beauty or introspection, and each story narrated a piece of her healing journey. Lucas was by her side, helping her set up the exhibition and offering words of encouragement whenever she felt insecure. His constant presence was a reminder that she was not alone, and Julia felt grateful to have him in her life, not just as a friend, but now as a partner. On a quiet night, while finalizing preparations, Lucas suggested they take a break and go to the beach. The full moon illuminated the path, and the sound of the waves created a soft and comforting melody. Sitting on the sand, they talked about the exhibition and what it meant for Julia. "I'm so proud of you," Lucas said, looking at her with affection. "You've managed to turn your pain into something powerful and beautiful." Julia smiled, touched by his words. "I couldn't have done it without you, Lucas. Your presence and support have been crucial for me." They sat in silence for a moment, enjoying each other's company. Julia felt overwhelmed by a wave of emotion, realizing how much she had fallen in love with Lucas. He was everything she could wish for: kind, understanding, and genuine. "Lucas, Julia began, hesitating for a moment. "I really love you." Lucas smiled, his eyes shining in the moonlight. "I love you too, Julia. From the first day, I knew there was something special about you." They kissed under the starry sky, sealing the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. For Julia, it was a moment of complete happiness and fulfillment, the beginning of a love that promised to be lasting and true. In the days that followed, as the exhibition approached, Julia and Lucas spent more and more time together, strengthening their relationship and supporting each other. The village, with its serene beauty and welcoming community, had become the perfect setting for the blossoming of their love. Finally, the day of the exhibition arrived. The bookstore was filled with visitors, all eager to see Julia's work. The photographs were carefully arranged, each accompanied by a text that told a part of her story. Julia watched, moved, as people walked through the space, absorbing her images and words. Donna Amelia, always an encouraging presence, congratulated Julia on the success of the exhibition. "You've really touched everyone's hearts here, my dear. I'm so proud of you." Julia smiled, feeling accomplished. The exhibition was not just a milestone in her career, but also a celebration of her personal journey and the people who had helped her along the way. With the success of the exhibition, Julia had become a beloved figure in the village. Her art and stories had touched many hearts, and she felt more connected than ever to the community that had welcomed her. However, with recognition came new challenges and responsibilities she would need to face. The exhibition attracted the attention of a gallery in a nearby city, which was interested in showcasing Julia's work. While the opportunity was exciting, it also brought a level of pressure and expectation she wasn't used to handling. Julia found herself torn between the desire to expand her career and the fear of losing the simplicity and peace she had found in the village. Lucas, always by her side, offered unwavering support. "You have incredible talent, Julia. Don't let fear stop you from moving forward. Remember, you have control over how you want your career to develop." Lucas's words gave Julia the courage needed to consider the gallery's offer. She knew she needed to balance her professional ambitions with her personal well-being, and Lucas was willing to help her find that balance. As she pondered the decision, Julia also dedicated herself to strengthening her relationship with Beatrice. The two sisters were slowly rebuilding their trust, and Beatrice frequently visited the village to spend time with Julia. They rediscovered the joy of sharing stories and laughter, something they thought they had lost forever. During one of these visits, Beatrice brought unexpected news. She had decided to move to the village, seeking a new life away from the city. "I want to start over, just like you did," Beatrice explained, her gaze full of determination. "And I want to be close to you, if you'll allow it." Julia was moved by Beatrice's decision. "Of course I want you to be here," she replied, embracing her sister. "We can build something new together." With Beatrice joining her, Julia felt even more motivated to face the challenges ahead. Her sister's presence was a reminder that forgiveness and reconciliation were possible, and that family love could flourish even after difficult times. While all this was happening, Julia continued to explore her creativity, experimenting with new techniques and themes in her art. She found inspiration in the stories of the village's residents, capturing their lives and experiences in photographs and words. The village, with its natural beauty and rich tapestry of human stories, continued to be an inexhaustible source of inspiration. Finally, after much reflection, Julia decided to accept the gallery's offer, but with conditions that ensured she maintained control over her work and life. She was determined to pursue her career on her own terms, without compromising the values and simplicity she had found in the village. With Lucas and Beatrice by her side, Julia was ready to embrace the future, full of hope and confidence. The journey to that point had been filled with challenges, but also with growth and love. She knew that, regardless of what the future held, she was surrounded by people who supported and loved her. The path ahead was full of possibilities, and Julia was eager to explore them. With the decision to accept the gallery's offer, Julia felt a new wave of energy and enthusiasm. The project for the exhibition in the nearby city was a chance to share her art with a wider audience, but also an opportunity to showcase her personal and artistic evolution. She dedicated herself to creating new pieces that reflected her experiences and the stories the village had provided her. The support of Lucas and Beatrice was crucial during this period. Lucas helped Julia prepare the works for the exhibition, offering artistic and logistical advice. His constant presence was a pillar of strength, reminding Julia that she was not alone in this new endeavor. Beatrice, on the other hand, was adapting to life in the village, finding her own path and contributing to the community in meaningful ways. While working on the preparation for the exhibition, Julia also became more deeply involved with the village and its residents. She organized photography and writing workshops, encouraging others to explore their own stories and creativity. These gatherings not only strengthened the bonds within the community, but also provided Julia with a sense of purpose and belonging. The day of the exhibition in the city finally arrived, and Julia was surrounded by friends and family who came to support her. The gallery was filled with visitors, all curious to see the works that had been created with such care and passion. Julia felt nervous, but also excited to share her journey with those present. Throughout the evening, she received praise and positive feedback about her work. The photographs and stories that made up the exhibition deeply touched the visitors, many of whom identified with the themes of overcoming and personal discovery. Julia felt a wave of gratitude for having the opportunity to impact so many lives through her art. After the exhibition's opening, Julia and Lucas found a moment of tranquility to reflect on everything they had achieved together. "I'm so proud of you," Lucas said, holding Julia's hand. "You've turned your pain into something truly beautiful and inspiring." Julia smiled, feeling complete. "I couldn't have done it without you, Lucas. You've been my safe harbor amidst it all." They spent the rest of the night celebrating with friends and family, including Beatrice, who was radiant with happiness for her sister's success. Beatrice's presence was a reminder that, despite the difficulties of the past, family and love could be rebuilt and strengthened. With the exhibition concluded, Julia returned to the village with a sense of fulfillment and peace. She knew she had found her path, both personally and professionally, and that she was surrounded by people who loved and supported her. Life in the village continued to offer new challenges and opportunities, but Julia was ready to face them with courage and determination. She had learned the importance of following her heart and trusting herself, values that would continue to guide her on her journey. As the days passed, Julia and Lucas began planning their future together, dreaming of new adventures and projects. The village, with its serene beauty and welcoming community, with the exhibition in the city concluded and a new chapter of her life beginning to unfold, Julia felt more confident and centered than ever. The experience of sharing her art and story had been transformative, not only for her, but also for those around her. The positive impact of her work continued to reverberate, inspiring others to explore their own journeys of healing and self-discovery. Back in the village, Julia immersed herself in new projects that reflected her passion for connecting people and stories. She began working on a book that compiled her photographs and narratives, a testament to her personal transformation and the lessons she had learned along the way. The book was not just a collection of memories, but also a celebration of resilience and the power of the human spirit. Lucas, always by her side, encouraged Julia to follow her creative instincts and explore new forms of expression. Together, they dreamed of organizing cultural events in the village, bringing artists and writers from different places to share their experiences and inspire the local community. Beatrice, meanwhile, was flourishing in her new life in the village. She had found a job at the local school, where she helped organize extracurricular activities for the children. Beatrice's presence brought new energy to the village, and she had become a valuable part of the community. The relationship between Julia and Beatrice continued to strengthen. The two sisters had overcome barriers that seemed insurmountable, and now they were closer than ever. They shared moments of laughter and reflection, grateful for having found their way back to each other. Over time, Julia realized that the village had become her true home. The welcoming community and inspiring environment were the perfect setting for her life and work. She felt at peace, knowing she had found a balance between her professional ambitions and personal well-being. One day, while walking along the beach at sunset with Lucas, Julia reflected on everything she had achieved. "Sometimes, I still can't believe everything that happened," she said, watching the waves gently break on the sand. Lucas smiled, squeezing her hand. "You're an incredible person, Julia, and all of this is a result of your strength and determination." Julia felt a wave of gratitude for Lucas and for everyone who had supported her journey. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, looking into his eyes. "You showed me that true love is possible." As the sun set, painting the sky with vibrant colors, Julia realized she was exactly where she needed to be. The journey that had begun with pain and betrayal had transformed into a story of love, overcoming, and self-discovery. She knew the future still held challenges, but she was ready to face them with courage and hope. With Lucas by her side and a community that supported her, Julia was prepared to write the next chapters of her life. She had found her place in the world, and more importantly, she had found herself. And so, under the starry sky of the village she now called home, Julia began to dream of what would come next. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment to support the channel.